They are. Please welcome again Jean-Philippe Tremblay.
Thank you.
Well, thank you for the film, and thank you for taking on such a critical subject, but a really vast one that can feel quite overwhelming, particularly, I imagine, for an independent filmmaker setting out to make this film. Was there a particular trigger that made you want to tackle the media head on? What led you to it?
Well, I guess I had just left the London Film School. That's where I studied, I guess, for a couple of years. And coming out, I knew I wanted to make a feature documentary, so I had a few subjects on the table. One of them being inspired by Ben Bigdickian, an American journalist who wrote the book called The New Media Monopoly, and that was one of the inspirations. And it just so happened, like we see here in the film, that in 2007, the Federal Communications Commission announced that they were going to go around the country, around the United States, and ask people what they thought about their media, because they were looking to make new rules for media ownership. So that was kind of the clincher right there. It was like, well, this is made for us. I mean, how about we travel with the FCC and go north, south, east, west in the United States and hear what people have to say about their own media. And that's really what started, you could say, the research for the film. And we researched for about a couple of years, and then came back here and produced the rest of what you saw, basically.
Well, and the rest of what we see is a really dense sort of material, really tightly woven film that's bringing together the whole history of the kind of modern media, as well as these stories, the case studies, I guess, that you focus on, and some quite crucial theoretical ideas in it. So can you tell us more about that journey, how that original idea, and how long it took you to do all of this?
Yeah, I guess when we were doing the research, I was reading a lot of books that I'm sure many of you are probably familiar with, you know, whether it's Chomsky or Robert McChesney or a lot of the people here that are contributing to the film. It was about reading their material, meeting them at the FCC conference, and also at the national media conferences that they were having in the United States, which is also where we premiered the film in the US just this last April, almost a year after having finished the film. Kind of hard to get it into the United States. So doing that research, I guess, as a filmmaker, I was very happy to get all that information. I mean, so much to go on with the history. But then I really wanted to tell it through the people at the front lines, through journalists. So we had met these journalists telling us some of the stories that you've seen here, and then started investigating it to see what was done on them, what had been written about them, and also, I guess the choice of these stories was also about finding stories that other people will not tell you. Like, we have themes here in the film. For example, the last story of Bill Conrad, who committed suicide on that To Catch a Predator series. You know, our theme for that was about sensationalism. So we could have gone out and done something on Paris Hilton, or, you know, one of these typical sensationalist celebrity kind of a thing, but it's just an example that we wanted to go after the really hard stories that a lot of people had not heard about, or had heard in a certain way, but not in this, from this perspective. So that's kind of how we went about to construct the documentary to tell our stories.
Those stories in particular, those case studies of those journalists, really shocking. Were there any others that you were trying to follow and couldn't put in the film for any reason?
Yeah, we researched a lot of stories. I think, you know, you go into this thing, we're going to make a film, and we wanted to try and cover as much as possible the history and contemporary journalists, and have, you know, what we consider to be the greatest journalists, not only in the United States, but around the world. And I think that's really what makes up these contributors here, whether they work in independent media or for the mainstream. And I think we did a pretty good job of representing that here. But with our heads down, we just accumulated the stories. We had maybe about close to 30 stories, and then we just broke it down to these 6. And again, what kind of formed our choices was also starting to reach out to these people, to the journalists and people that were part of the stories. I mean, a lot of people didn't want to talk to us because they're scared about their security, their families, their job security. So we had to drop those particular stories. So that also was part of our, it was a practical reason, not necessarily a choice from us, but part of the reason why we focused on these stories. And you just got to hand it to these people. It's quite amazing. I don't know how familiar you are with US personalities such as Dan Rather, who was kind of like the Jerry Paxman of CBS News for 30 years, and for him to come on the film and to speak the way he does it is quite, for me, I was just so pleased that he actually took the time to say what he said and for us to include in the film. But I hope that answers the question.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and it's brave of them to talk in this way. And what about for you as a filmmaker? You're kind of aiming right between the eyes of some massive, probably quite litigious companies. Did you have any concerns about making a film like this?
I guess I'm just this. I've always wanted to make films and documentaries since I was a teenager, and I was always this kind of guy who, I don't know. I wouldn't have done it if I would have thought like that. It's kind of like, actually, that's what I find exciting. Actually, it's like we read the new media monopoly, and then we start passing around, maybe speaking to other filmmakers, other distributors, whatever, people in the industry or not in the industry. And they're like, well, there's a reason why no one's made, a big feature film on this kind of stuff. But that's what kind of gets me excited, and also my team. So you surround yourself with people who, in a way, have no fear. And I think first and foremost, you see these journalists on the front line. I mean, they go out and really dedicate their lives to bringing information. I mean, part of one of my challenges was to try to get these guys to come and speak, because they're literally 7 days a week working heads down. I get some kind of comment, I go, let's do an interview, and they say, well, actually, that's 1 day worth of writing for me. And they really hold on to that. They're quite special, a special breed, and it kind of rubs off, and you kind of forget about, the potential dangers. I mean, certainly you go through things. When I go to the United States, I've gotten refused to go in the country. We've seen examples recently. I think it was Glenn Greenwald's partner. It was well publicized. It happens all the time, but you learn to live through it. And, there is a community of people who, actually want to do something about the world we live in, and you take comfort into that you're not alone, and that we're not alone, and, go ahead and make these films, I guess.
Or maybe in a way that's a partial answer to what my next question was going to be, because we hear from a lot of the people actually involved in this, the journalists that are affected by this. But we don't hear from any of these major media conglomerations, I mean particularly CBS. And I wondered whether you approached, say, CBS, or whether it was a decision from the beginning not to include that voice.
No, I guess when you start the project, you don't really make decisions, and obviously you say, well, I'm going to not only cover the journalists, but I'm going to go sit down with Rupert Murdoch and have a coffee. You start imagining these scenarios. We did try. I moved to the United States for a year and a half. It's not like we had a gang of people. I mean, the people who made the film is me and Dan. We were the ones in an office with our computers, kind of traveling around the States, and it's still me and someone else. Of course, the crew gets bigger. You get a director of photography and a sound person and a composer, high tennis. to come and help you. There's obviously over 100 names here in the credits. But at the same time, it's you know, we're not a lot of people. We don't have a, you know, we're not doing any lobbying. It's actually me picking up the phone and saying, "Can I speak to Mr. Murdoch?" You know. So, and we know that after a certain amount of time that wasn't going to work. You know, that it was going to be a waste of time, to be honest. And then I decided, well, actually, we have archives. You know, so we tried to go that route. So we do get the voices of these CEOs through the archives. So, and then you got to make that decision at some point. It's kind of like, well, you know, it's taken me 4 months just to get Julian Assange, you know, or David Simon, etc. You know, it'll probably take me, you know, 5.5 years to get Rupert Murdoch or whatnot. So that's how we went about, you know, those kind of CEOs. But like I said, you know, we have people from both sides as well. It's not just the CEOs, but you know, David Simon speaking the way he does, and you know, he's an amazing journalist, writer, you know, making pretty great TV series for HBO, owned by Time Warner. But his heart is journalism, so for him, it was a pleasure to come and speak to us. So you know, we try to balance it out that way.
I really want to get questions from the audience, but just before I open it up to you guys, I wanted to bring us to the UK and the media landscape here, because Jean-Philippe, you're actually obviously based in London.
Yeah.
I say obviously, even though you probably travelled around quite a lot to make this film.
Yeah.
I feel like we've got our own particular set of press ethics questions here, but how does the UK media landscape compare to the US?
Yeah, no, good question. I mean, that's something, again, when we started the film, I mean, we wanted to, you know, we had big ideas, you know, we wanted to cover the whole world, and then we decided to cover the United States because the Big Five, as they call them, are based in the United States, including News Corporation. You know, we know it started in Australia. Now their headquarters are based in the States, and you know, they're all over the world, just like the Big Five. And we thought that because of America's influence around the world, whether it's economy or culture or politics, it kind of really takes over, especially here in the Western world. So we thought that focusing on the States, people from around the world, at least the Western world, will actually be able to relate because of the special relationship, let's say, between the UK and the United States. If we compare the two medias, I mean, you know, it's a funny one. I mean, surely if I go to the States and I start walking the streets, or I go to a hotel or a friend's house and I turn on the TV and start reading the papers, it's like nowhere else in the world in a way. It's quite amazing. Just you know, just the words and images and the news topics that they're covering, and the way they cover it is just it's kind of unreal. So I think that media is quite extreme, but it doesn't mean that the rest of democracies like the UK, like Canada, where I'm from, by the way, and other places in the world. I mean, you know, we have to keep check on the media. I don't think, you know, I don't want to say that the media, I mean, it is maybe slightly better, but then again, it's just as bad.
Well, the Ralph Miliband in the Daily Mail story this weekend, and Ed Miliband's response is a reminder of just how politically influenced our papers are. Let's see if there's...
I mean, the thing to keep in mind is that these corporations are everywhere. They're here, and they're working in more ways than one. Ways that we're just starting to uncover more and more so, you know, through brave people like Julian Assange and Chelsea Manning and Edward Snowden, and you know, so this is just the tip of the iceberg, and it's quite scary the deeper you get into it.
Because of course the film was finished way before Edward Snowden's revelations, and I guess around the time of Chelsea Manning.
Yeah, that's
the WikiLeaks. Yeah. So are things any easier, do you think, for whistleblowers now?
No, they're worse. They're worse. If you compare the state of whistleblowers now compared to other, let's just focus on America, if we will, if we compare to other American presidents, the Obama administration has incarcerated more whistleblowers than all presidents combined before him in the United States. And of course, these three names always come up, but they're just a representation of other people who are trying to do the same thing, and we never get to hear their voices like we've heard or not heard Julian's and Ed's and Chelsea's, really.
I know I keep on saying that I'm opening up, but just quickly, did I hear that when you were interviewing Julian Assange, was that when he was under house arrest?
Yeah, he was under house arrest when we interviewed him. Yeah.
Was that difficult to get that interview?
It was difficult, but we're talking about a situation where it's me. I'm in London. I found out who his lawyers are. I hang out in front of their building. I have a picture of them. I'm looking, so it's that kind of a thing, and rightly so from his perspective. His future and his situation is extremely bleak. He doesn't manipulate anything electronic. He really has to be careful on who he can trust. So it took some time to speak to the people around him to allow me to speak to him, because you can imagine so many people come up to him for questions or other sorts of things. So it's quite a complicated situation that he's in, and one that's completely unique. I'm sure there are probably individuals in the world, present and past, that have had this kind of experience. I'm sure you've probably followed through the papers, which are all historic, by the way, of course, but quite an interesting situation.
Let's see if we've got any hands in the audience. It's a bit difficult to see. There's someone right at the front. Yes, do speak up.
Enjoy the film.
Thank you.
Can you just give us an update on the situation with the internet in regards to the media power? Because your film ends on a question mark with it.
Yes. Yeah.
The question was asking Jean-Philippe for an update on the situation with relation to the internet, because the film kind of ends on a question mark there.
Yeah, the question mark being, it's all for grabs. That's really, we're at the infancy of this amazing technology. I mean, it's changing, the effects of it and the usage of it is changing by the day, by the year. The numbers are astronomical. And the projections about people using the internet, if we look down 5 years from now, or 10 years from now, or even 20 years from now, it's just kind of unbelievable. So it's kind of like, we take a look back in history here in the film when we see when mass media came 100 years ago with radio, 50 years later with 50 years later with television, and now with the internet. And I think what's happening is that it's history repeating itself. We have a technology where there's so much invested hope within it, like mass media is going to bring democracy to the people with radio, with television, and now with the internet. But I do think it's an amazing tool. I mean, we all do. How amazing is the internet? The way it works and the way we can communicate.
You have to raise funds for Obama's first campaign, isn't it?
AT&T.
Look where that's got.
Absolutely.
What you've just said about Obama.
Well, and what's happening with information, the NSA, and the control and the utilization of the internet by these corporations, they've been working on it for 50 to 100 years. It wasn't a surprise that the internet was upon us, Maybe to some of us actually it wasn't, maybe it was to me, to be honest. But to these corporations, it's a decade's worth of effort. And we're just starting to realize what it means, how, the invasion on our lives. Okay, maybe not for me and you, for example, but We're talking about members of parliament and how they're influencing and how their emails or research and how they're manipulated. Members of Congress, so or Julian Assange's people who are trying to give us information that we need to hear in our democracies. So that's what's happening with the internet. I mean, we also have to think that it's not technology that, democracy is not about technology, it's about people. It's about, that's what democracy is, it's people. So it is the voice that's never heard. We still can express ourselves to a certain extent on the internet. I mean, the world's your oyster, if you will. I mean, there are some successes, like WikiLeaks, but then look what happens when you do that. So, I mean, it's all up for grabs. It's getting more and more conservative, more and more narrow. Yeah.
Let's take another question. Yes, there's a gentleman here, and then we'll come to this lady. And speak up if you can, yes, please.
Thank you very much. I was wondering if you could talk perhaps about publicly funded broadcasters, PBS, BBC, CBC, and their attempts at impartiality, particularly getting brought up in a private echo chamber.
So the question was about publicly funded broadcasters.
So I mean, I'm as skeptical. I mean, here we're talking not really about just the corporations, the big five, but how they're interlocking interests with governments. So I mean, it's all the same people. So I mean, we can play the game. Oh, look at public television, the BBC. We don't have any commercials, so great. Okay, that's a plus actually. Okay, 1 point here, but I mean, compared to the United States, where there's just commercials every 8 minutes. Public television or public broadcasting, publicly funded media is not the answer. And I think the answer is really independent media, funded by the people and supported by the people. And we made our film independently. We were inspired by independent organizations. A lot of them are represented here by the cast. Just to give you a tip of the iceberg, I do, if you want to know more, you can go to our website, look at the people, they're all listed there, who they are, Amy Goodman, so on and so forth. Look at what they do, and actually not even in my film, but yesterday I wrote an article for Open Democracy. Open Democracies, I did not know them, they work in my building. I had a great coffee with Magnus there. They published my article yesterday. Oh, and they are the only independent media outlet who is part of the American Independent Media Consortium. And they've been doing that for just the past 5 or 6 months. It was a pleasure for me to meet them. And, it's really to look out for media that is funded by the people. That's where it stops and ends, and public media is just as, as bad as these corporations. They're the same people.
Yes.
Do you see it as more risky when an organisation is guided by an ideological mogul? Or do you see it as worse when they follow commercial objectives at all costs?
Well, I think really what we have to ask ourselves is not, which is worse of the two evils? I think that's, in short, really what you're presenting me with. And I'm like, well, okay, how about we make the media that we want, like someone says here in the film. I read a quote today in a book, I think it was in Robert McChesney's called Digital Disconnect. And in his book, he quotes someone he's talking about his teenage years in 1968. And the quote is, I'm paraphrasing, something like, surprise yourself, ask the impossible, And that's what is motivating, these journalists to bring us the news. And that's what's motivating me to make this film. And I think that's what should motivate journalists when they're bringing news. What is news? I mean, it's not about money. It's not about an ideology. It's about reporting the truth about what's going on in society, and that's where it ends. And that's why independent media is the only media that we can trust.
Yes, the lady in a red jacket here.
Hi. I was just wondering what distribution channels you tried and if you'd found any resistance from the media or networks to showing your film.
What distribution channels have you tried, and have you had any resistance from networks?
Yes. We met, I think, yeah, hi. Nice to see you, thanks for coming. Distribution, yes. We do have distribution. We went to many film festivals around the world, about 40 in the past year, including Sheffield and Hot Docs in Toronto and IDFA in Amsterdam. So the film has been out there. We were also nominated for some best documentary of the year at something called Cinema for Peace in Berlin, Germany, just this past February. Searching for Sugar Man won. It's a great film. So the film has gone out there, and pretty much every distributor, sales agent in the world knows about the film. We did give it, or lend it, I should say, to First Hand Films in Switzerland, and they represent the film for sales around the world. I guess about 15 territories have picked it up, including Al Jazeera, Middle East, so it's going to be in 26 countries very soon. Link TV in the United States. We had theatrical release in Canada and a bunch of other places. Nobody yet here in the UK. I was certainly hoping like a Channel 4 or Storyville or stuff like that. Or even I heard PBS, earlier. It's just what I'm getting, what seems to be clear is that this is just not something they want to put on their airwaves. And it's no surprise that PBS or these kinds of organizations are not gonna distribute this. But we do have independent distribution. We just have DVDs coming out. If you look at our website, in a couple of weeks we'll be able to offer DVDs in Europe and the UK, and we're going to stream it online and just ask a donation. But that's going to take another month or two. I guess also my reason for going that route was that I guess going through a traditional distribution route, it just you get a lot of publicity. So that was the thought. I'm not sure that I would go that route for the next film, because these are people that also have a lot of films on their hands and not just dealing with this one film. And I think that a lot more efforts are put in sexier, let's say, subjects. So that's what's happening with the distribution of the film. And that's why I'm also so thankful to show it here. I mean, this is a real treat. Like I said, it hasn't been shown in London since the Frontline Club, I think, about 10 months ago. So.
Oh, and it's a treat to have you here. There's a hand raised very high, just in the middle there.
I thought it was a great film. I was really, really excited by it. I thought it was a very brave film. I spoke to you a little while ago, because I know you, and you were explaining to me what you were doing next, which is a really exciting project. Can you talk about it to an audience?
Thanks for bringing that up. Well, yes and no. But yeah, I am working on a new project. It's about wars and how people live on the other side of let's say, this front of attack, led by the United States and, the coalition. So it's about going on the other side and in a very interesting way. So that's what I'm working on.
Just some hints there.
Yeah, sorry, I can't really say everything.
I think we've got time for one more question.
Danny Glover's going
And
to be
there's One more question, just on the back row there.
I just had one question about the content of the Christina Borgeson investigation of TWA 800. I've seen other documentaries about that, and I was just a little curious why you didn't bring in motive as well as them taking away the material evidence from her, given the high profile and unprecedented research that had been done by the people who were on the plane into the AIDS epidemic. And then I was also wondering where you're from, because I thought you had a really great insight into how the Matrix works. America works.
I think everyone heard that, because you had to yell, because you're all the way back there. Yeah, thanks for your comment and question. Yeah, TWA 800, did you see because she just produced, Christina Borgeson just produced a film. It came out 2 months ago. It's entitled Flight 800, and it was, the company behind it was Lionsgate, so one of the conglomerates. It's a 1 hour, I think, TV documentary. I still haven't seen it. She did send me the trailer. I've been on a couple radio shows with her, about media. Well, I guess, the thing is that we can make a feature film, more than a feature film, about all these individual stories. So, but I did make the choice at the beginning that I wanted to cover more than one story. Here we cover 6, including TWA 800. And I guess to make it short, I had to be quite brutal with myself and a lot of information out there, but really what really grounded me all the time was to tell the media story, tell the story of the journalist, where that stops or keeps going is to the judgment of me, fortunately or unfortunately. But these are decisions that had to be made, but certainly there's, you can go out and read Gary Webb's Dark Alliance. You can go out and read Christina's book entitled Into the Buzzsaw, which covers a lot of these journalists that are more obscure, that we don't hear about, that have been wiped out. This has been going on through history, people who bring information and the dangers they face because of the job they've decided to do. But now this mainstream kind of environment has made it comfortable to just play the game and go along and get paid and have a kind of certain lifestyle, I guess. So that's about that. And I'm from Canada. I'm from Jonquière, Quebec. It's in northern Quebec. And I guess as Canadians or Québécois, we always live with these giant neighbors, just south of the border. I guess it's an interesting place to be. And part of what inspired me too is other filmmakers, from Canada, Canadian filmmakers, that we always have this kind of cheeky, kind of like perspective to the United States, and a lot of filmmakers have made films about that have inspired me, like, their household names in Canada, and they've made some amazing films, but for one reason or another, it doesn't go outside the Canadian borders, but people like Pierre Falardeau or Michel Brault, you're probably maybe more familiar with maybe Peter Wintonic and Manufacturing Consent, or Mark Akbar and The Corporation. These are people that I admire, that inspire me, that I'm lucky enough to call friends as well, since I've made this film. And so I guess that's kind of also a funny kind of a Canadian thing that we got going on with our neighbors south of the border.
Well, I'm very sorry that we've got to wrap it up there. We've run out of time for the evening, but it's been a real pleasure to have you here, very eye-opening, so please join me in thanking you.
Thank you. And go to our website. I always forget to say this, but it is just me and one other person promoting this film. If you can go on our website, visit our Facebook, you know, tell people to write about it. I mean, I don't know how many times we've invited The Guardian to these things or other news outlets, you know, let's have this discussion, let's keep on it, and any help would be much appreciated. Just a few pushes of the button on the internet, and you know, that's how we're going to make the internet more and more ours as well as it. You know, the more we support each other over the net. So thank you again. Thank you for coming. Thank you.